Time travel has long lived at the edge of human imagination, suspended between science, myth, and mystery. Yet scattered across history are stories so strange, so detailed, that they refuse to be dismissed easily. These accounts come from different eras, cultures, and witnesses who had nothing in common except one impossible claim: they encountered people, places, or events that did not belong to their time. One of the most unsettling stories begins in France in the early 1900s. Two English academics were visiting the gardens of Versailles, expecting a peaceful afternoon surrounded by history. As they wandered deeper into the grounds, the atmosphere began to change. The light appeared flat and unnatural, sounds seemed muted, and the air felt heavy. They encountered people dressed in old-fashioned clothing who stared at them in silence. A woman was seen sketching near a small cottage, wearing attire unmistakably from the 18th century. Moments later, the strange atmosphere vanished. When the visitors later studied historical records, they discovered the cottage matched the Petit Trianon exactly as it appeared during the reign of Marie Antoinette, and the woman sketching closely resembled the Queen herself. No reenactments were scheduled that day, and multiple historical details witnessed had not been public knowledge at the time. Another story emerges from the chaos of World War II. During an air raid on a British city, a man was reportedly injured and taken to a hospital. Doctors noticed something odd. His clothing was made of unfamiliar fabric, his hairstyle was outdated, and he carried identification that appeared decades old. Before questions could be answered, the man died. Later investigation suggested his identity matched someone who had gone missing years earlier, long before the bombing ever occurred. The most disturbing detail was that his death certificate seemed to already exist in the records, dated many years in the future from the time he was supposed to have lived. The possibility that someone had slipped through time during a moment of extreme stress raised unsettling questions about whether trauma itself could fracture reality. In New York City, a story surfaced in the 1950s that left police baffled. A man was struck by a car in the middle of a busy street. Witnesses said he appeared confused by modern surroundings, staring at cars and buildings in disbelief. When officers searched his pockets, they found coins that were no longer in circulation, a business
I
card
never
for a company
imagined
that
it
no
would be
longer
this
existed,
grand.
and a letter dated decades earlier.
It truly is breathtaking.
His clothing was
Yeah.
old-fashioned
Remember
but
what the guidebook
well-preserved,
said?
as if untouched by time. Investigators traced the address on the letter and discovered that the name matched a man who had vanished mysteriously nearly 70 years before. The man's age, appearance, and belongings all aligned perfectly, as though he had stepped out of the past and directly into the future for only a few fatal moments. A more modern account comes from the late 20th century, involving a traveler who appeared suddenly at an international airport. Immigration officials questioned the traveler, who insisted that a country listed in the passport existed between two European nations. The problem was that no such country existed on any modern map. The passport itself appeared authentic, complete with stamps from airports that were real, but associated with dates and places that did not align with known history. The traveler claimed to have visited the same airport many times before, completely unaware that decades had supposedly passed. While officials attempted to verify the information, the traveler was placed in a secure room. By morning, the room was empty, locked from the outside, and the traveler was never seen again. No explanation was ever officially recorded. There is also the haunting case of a woman who claimed to have lived multiple lifetimes within a single memory. Through hypnosis, she described events from centuries earlier with precise detail, including customs, language patterns, and geographical knowledge that had not been fully uncovered by historians at the time. Skeptics argued that it was imagination or subconscious learning, yet later archaeological discoveries confirmed several of her descriptions as accurate. What made the case particularly unsettling was her claim that time did not move in a straight line, but folded in moments of emotional intensity, allowing consciousness to slip across eras. Whether psychological or temporal, the knowledge she revealed challenged the idea that the past is completely sealed off from the present. Across all these stories, a common thread emerges. None of the individuals involved claimed to invent a machine or control the experience. Instead, time travel appeared accidental, brief, and often tragic. These moments seemed to occur during emotional shock, physical danger, or profound disorientation, as if reality itself momentarily lost stability. Scientists have long theorized about time dilation, parallel timelines, and wormholes, but these stories suggest something more intimate and unpredictable. They hint that time may not be a rigid sequence, but a fragile structure that can bend under unknown conditions. What makes these accounts so compelling is not just their mystery, but the human reactions within them. Confusion, fear, awe, and disbelief dominate every description. There is no triumph or celebration, only the quiet terror of being somewhere that does not belong. Witnesses often describe an unnatural silence or heaviness, as if the environment itself resists the intrusion. Objects, clothing, and behavior become clues, fragments of displaced realities colliding for a brief instant. Despite investigations, reports, and speculation, no definitive explanation has ever been accepted. Governments deny knowledge, scientists remain divided, and skeptics continue to offer rational alternatives. Yet the stories persist, passed down, documented, and re-examined with each new generation. Perhaps they endure because they challenge the deepest assumption humans hold about existence, that time moves forward in a single, unbreakable direction. If even one of these stories is true, it suggests that history is not as distant as believed, and the future may already be brushing against the present in ways unknown. Somewhere between seconds, between heartbeats, between moments of chaos and calm, time may be folding in on itself, leaving behind witnesses who are never fully believed, and questions that refuse to disappear. Time has always been considered a linear progression, a river flowing from the past to the present and onward into the future. Yet some experiences suggest that this flow may not be as absolute as it seems. Among the most intriguing reports are those of mysterious historical encounters, moments in which ordinary people find themselves witnessing scenes, people, or details from past eras with uncanny accuracy. These are not the staged reenactments seen in museums or films. These are vivid, often brief interactions with reality as it existed long before the observer was born. One striking aspect of these accounts is the precision of the details. Witnesses describe architecture, clothing, behavior, and even spoken language that historians later confirm existed during a specific period. In some cases, these individuals have no formal training or prior knowledge that could explain their awareness, yet they recount minute details that align perfectly with historical records. This raises the unsettling possibility that under certain conditions, the past may not be confined to memory or documents, but may still exist in some perceivable form. Consider, for example, the accounts of travelers who have walked through old estates or public spaces and described scenes exactly as they were centuries before. A common theme in these experiences is that the observer notices inconsistencies in the surroundings, subtle changes that hint at a reality outside the normal timeline. Gardens, streets, and buildings may appear altered, populated by people wearing clothing from a different era or engaging in practices long since abandoned. These encounters are often accompanied by a sense of unreality, a heavy silence, unusual lighting, or an almost dreamlike quality to the air. Observers report seeing women with parasols and gowns that no longer exist, men in attire appropriate to a time they only know from books, and objects or decorations that have long been removed or destroyed. The more closely these details are examined, the more they align with historical facts, sometimes in ways that could not have been anticipated. The accuracy of these accounts is remarkable, especially given that many of the observers are ordinary people with no specialized knowledge of history. Another aspect that makes these encounters compelling is the suddenness with which they occur. In many stories, there is no warning or preparation. A person may be walking through a familiar street or garden, and in a moment the surroundings shift. The familiar becomes unfamiliar, and the observer suddenly finds themselves in what seems to be a past era. People, objects, and settings appear with startling realism, and there is often a sense of immediacy, as if the observer has been transported into the world they had only previously read about. What makes this phenomenon particularly perplexing is that it does not seem to be reproducible at will. Those who experience these moments often describe them as fleeting, leaving no opportunity for study or documentation while they are occurring. Memories, however vivid, remain the only evidence, making verification difficult and leading some to dismiss the experiences as dreams or hallucinations. Yet, in documented cases where later investigation was possible, details recorded by the witnesses have been corroborated by historical research, suggesting that something far stranger than imagination may be at work. The notion of witnessing past realities also raises questions about perception and consciousness. Some researchers have proposed that under certain conditions, human awareness might be capable of perceiving residual impressions of historical events. These could be encoded in the environment itself, or accessible through some kind of temporal resonance that ordinary senses usually ignore. Witnesses frequently report a sense of familiarity with the era they observe, as if they recognize patterns, customs, or places without having consciously learned about them. Language, gestures, and social norms observed during these encounters often match historical records, including dialects or phrases that had disappeared long before the observer's lifetime. The accuracy of these details is striking, and in some cases, the observer recalls them with precision so detailed that historians or experts are astonished when reviewing their accounts. Many of these historical encounters also involve an interaction with people who appear unaware of the observer's presence. Figures seen in these moments act naturally within the context of their time, following routines, conversations, and behaviors appropriate to their era. They do not acknowledge the observer, yet their actions and appearances provide rich information about the period being observed. In some accounts, observers report subtle interactions, a fleeting glance, a gesture, or a reaction that suggests a fragile bridge between two times, a brief overlap where the present intrudes on the past without fully integrating into it. These interactions are often subtle, leaving the witness questioning whether what they experienced was real or imagined. Despite this uncertainty, corroboration with historical records has often validated the details described, reinforcing the possibility that these encounters are genuine glimpses into times long gone. The psychological impact of these experiences can be profound. Witnesses describe feelings of awe, confusion, and sometimes fear, as the normal rules of time and reality seem suspended. The shock of perceiving a past reality so vividly can be disorienting, creating lasting impressions that shape their understanding of history, life, and the nature of existence. Some describe a heightened awareness of temporal layers, sensing that the past is not entirely separate from the present, and that moments of history may be closer than commonly believed. These experiences often leave a deep sense of humility, a recognition of one's fleeting position within a vast, intricate temporal tapestry that stretches far beyond immediate perception. Skeptics argue that these accounts can be explained by memory lapses, imagination, or the influence of media and education. Yet the specificity of many reports challenges these explanations. The details observed, whether architectural features, clothing, language, or social behaviors, often go beyond what could have been learned casually, particularly when witnesses describe aspects that were obscure or undiscovered at the time of their encounter. The level of detail and accuracy raises profound questions about the nature of time and whether it is truly linear or if certain moments persist in ways that remain accessible under rare conditions. In some cases, these historical encounters involve not just visual observation, but full sensory immersion. Witnesses report hearing conversations, feeling textures, smelling scents, and experiencing the weather as it would have been in the past. The richness of these sensory details adds credibility to the accounts, distinguishing them from simple imagination or daydreams. The integration of multiple senses suggests that the experience is more than mental recall. It is an experiential journey into a time that should no longer exist. There is also a fascinating geographical pattern in some accounts, where historical encounters occur in locations with long and complex histories. Ancient castles, historical gardens, and urban streets with preserved architecture seem particularly prone to these experiences. It is as if the past leaves behind echoes in spaces dense with human activity and memory, creating conditions where the present can momentarily collide with what has already transpired. These echoes, however, are not uniform, and the encounters remain unpredictable. Some observers report only brief glimpses, while others experience extended sequences that reveal intricate details about life in the past. Ultimately, the stories of mysterious historical encounters invite reconsideration of how humans perceive time and history. They suggest that the past may not be fully confined to books, ruins, or records, but may continue to exist in ways perceptible under rare circumstances. These experiences challenge conventional understanding, hinting at a reality in which temporal boundaries are porous, and the events of centuries ago might still leave traces capable of interacting with those living today. The accounts are fragmented, fleeting, and difficult to study scientifically, yet their consistency and depth make them a compelling phenomenon, a reminder that the world may be far stranger than daily experience allows. Time travel, as described in numerous accounts, often manifests not as deliberate journeys, but as sudden, disorienting displacements across eras, placing individuals in times where they do not belong. These experiences are remarkable because they are not controlled, planned, or anticipated. They occur abruptly, catching the person entirely unprepared. The core of these displacements is the feeling of being out of time, as though the familiar surroundings of the present dissolve and are replaced by another reality governed by rules, customs, and appearances entirely foreign to the observer. Clothing, language, architecture, and social interactions all shift in subtle or dramatic ways, leaving the witness in a liminal space that feels both tangible and surreal. Those who report these experiences often describe them with a mixture of awe, confusion, and fear, recognizing the impossibility of what they are seeing while being unable to step out of it. One striking pattern in these accounts is the specificity of the details observed. Witnesses describe not just broad visual cues, but intricate aspects of daily life that perfectly align with the era they are apparently transported to. For example, street scenes may include the precise type of horse-drawn carriages, the color and style of clothing, even gestures and conversational norms that correspond exactly to historical records. Objects carried by people, accessories, or tools often reflect a time long past, and in some cases, these items are later verified to have existed, though the observer could have had no prior knowledge. In one account, a man found himself in a rural European village that looked centuries older than his surroundings should have been. He noted the style of pottery, the pattern of roof tiles, and the layout of homes, later discovering that these details matched exactly the historical period during which the village was originally built. Such precision suggests that these displacements are more than hallucinations or misperceptions. They are encounters with a past reality that continues to exist in some form. The manner in which these displacements occur is often linked to moments of high stress or emotional intensity. Many accounts describe individuals being caught in accidents, sudden illness, or extreme fear, and then finding themselves in a completely different temporal context. Some theorists suggest that the human consciousness may have the ability to slip through time under extraordinary circumstances, or that the laws of space and time themselves might temporarily distort, allowing for such improbable travel. In other cases, no obvious trigger is reported, leaving the phenomenon even more mysterious. Witnesses report a sensation of being pulled or drawn into the past, sometimes accompanied by a feeling of floating, detachment, or altered perception of time and space. The suddenness of these transitions contributes to their disorienting and often frightening nature, as observers realize they are seeing things they could never have known otherwise, yet cannot explain. The sensory experience of these displacements is frequently complete and immersive. It is not simply a visual encounter. Sounds, smells, and tactile sensations often accompany the journey. Footsteps on cobblestone streets, the clatter of carriages, the smell of cooking fires, and even the subtle feel of a breeze on the skin are reported with remarkable clarity. This multisensory immersion reinforces the reality of the experience for the observer, making it difficult to dismiss as imagination or hallucination. In some instances, The sense of temporal incongruity is so intense that witnesses feel physically unbalanced, as though their bodies are simultaneously rooted in the present and pulled toward the past. The environment is experienced fully, with layers of detail that would be nearly impossible to fabricate mentally. Interactions with people during these displacements are often fleeting but telling. Individuals encountered during these experiences typically behave naturally within their own historical context, unaware of the observer's presence or existence. The observer may overhear conversations, witness cultural rituals, or see daily routines in motion, gaining insight into the period that is otherwise inaccessible. Clothing, posture, language, and etiquette all adhere strictly to the era, creating a powerful contrast with the observer's own knowledge and expectations. In some accounts, these interactions are subtle, a nod, a glance, or an incidental remark, but they anchor the observer within the foreign timeline, reinforcing the authenticity of the experience. Observers often describe a sense of invisibility, as if they are ghosts temporarily walking among the living of another century, fully present yet unseen. Another striking element of these displacements is the apparent nonlinearity of time. Witnesses frequently report events or locations that seem to exist simultaneously with different periods, or that allow glimpses into the past while remaining physically situated in the present. Some describe seeing people they recognize from historical records or family histories, encountering them alive despite having lived centuries ago. Others find objects or documents in their possession that should not exist until years later, creating a paradox that challenges the conventional understanding of cause and effect. The sense of temporal overlap is disconcerting, suggesting that time may not be a straight line but a web of moments that occasionally fold back on themselves, allowing consciousness to drift into periods beyond immediate reach. Documentation of these experiences is often limited to personal testimony, as the encounters are fleeting and unpredictable. However, some accounts are supported by corroborating evidence. Witnesses may note architectural details, cultural practices, or artifacts that are later verified by historians or archaeologists, lending credibility to the idea that these displacements are genuine interactions with past realities. Even when such verification is not possible, the consistency of descriptions across different accounts, separated by geography, culture, and decades, suggests that the phenomenon is not isolated to imagination or delusion. The specificity of historical detail, combined with the immersive sensory experience, makes these reports compelling and difficult to dismiss outright. Psychologically, experiencing such a displacement can have profound effects. Observers often report a renewed awareness of the passage of time, a sense of the fragility of human life, and a deep respect for the continuity of history. The shock of encountering a period so fully realized can be disorienting, yet it also fosters a profound connection to humanity's past, offering insight into the lives, struggles, and customs of those who lived before. Some describe lasting changes in perception, feeling as though the past is not a distant abstraction but a living layer interwoven with the present, capable of influencing memory, thought, and emotion. Geographically, these displacements frequently occur in areas rich with historical significance. Ancient streets, castles, preserved villages, and landmarks with dense cultural history appear more prone to these phenomena. Observers suggest that locations imbued with centuries of human activity may hold residual impressions, like echoes in time, that allow brief intersections with other periods. These impressions might act as portals, opening for a fleeting moment to allow the observer to witness life as it once was. While such a theory remains speculative, the recurrence of reports in historically dense areas is intriguing and suggests that some environments may naturally facilitate these temporal slips. The unpredictability of these experiences is perhaps the most striking aspect. There is no known method to induce them at will, and the conditions under which they occur vary widely. Some are triggered by intense personal experiences, while others appear without warning. The duration is also inconsistent. Moments may stretch into minutes, hours, or appear as fleeting flashes, leaving the observer with fragmented memories that often require time and reflection to fully process. The abruptness of entry and exit reinforces the sense that these are not controlled events but accidental, uncontrollable displacements, as if the fabric of time itself has momentarily bent to allow passage. Despite skepticism, the repeated nature of these accounts across time and culture hints at a phenomenon that transcends individual imagination. The alignment of sensory detail, historical accuracy, and the psychological impact on witnesses presents a pattern that demands attention. These displacements challenge the notion that humans are confined to a single temporal reality, suggesting instead that consciousness may occasionally navigate layers of time in ways that are not yet understood. The implications are profound, raising questions about the nature of existence, the structure of time, and humanity's place within a continuum far more complex than previously imagined. Many accounts of time travel suggest that the phenomenon is not simply a matter of mechanics or technology, but often occurs during moments of extreme emotional or physical stress, trauma, or disorientation. These experiences are frequently unplanned, sudden, and triggered by situations that force the human mind and body to confront circumstances beyond ordinary comprehension. Observers report that these intense conditions seem to act as catalysts, allowing consciousness, or perhaps the very essence of a person, to slip from one temporal reality into another. Unlike deliberate experimentation with time, which remains largely theoretical, these incidents appear accidental, unpredictable, and often deeply unsettling, leaving witnesses both awed and confused by the experience they have endured. A recurring pattern in these stories is the association between heightened emotional states and temporal displacement. People undergoing extreme fear, shock, or stress often describe feeling as though reality itself has warped around them. For example, during accidents or near-death experiences, individuals have reported sudden shifts in surroundings, as though they were transported into a completely different era. Streets, buildings, and landscapes appear transformed, populated by figures dressed in unfamiliar historical attire, or operating within customs and social norms that seem foreign to the observer. In many cases, these displacements are accompanied by physical sensations, a strange weightlessness, dizziness, or a sense of being detached from the body, that suggest the entire perception of space and time has been altered. Witnesses describe the phenomenon as a disorienting blur, a momentary collapse of the temporal boundaries that normally separate past, present, and future. Physical trauma has also been cited as a triggering factor for accidental time travel. Instances have been documented where people caught in violent accidents or natural disasters suddenly appear in a setting that predates the modern era by decades or even centuries. The link between trauma and temporal displacement is intriguing because it implies that extreme stress may create conditions in which consciousness can break free from the linear flow of time. In one account, a man caught in a building collapse claimed to have emerged into a bustling street scene from the 19th century, complete with horse-drawn carriages and period attire. The vividness of his experience, including detailed sensory impressions of sounds, smells, and textures, suggested that he was not merely imagining the past but somehow perceiving it directly. Such stories raise profound questions about whether the human mind can interact with temporal layers under extraordinary circumstances, or whether time itself becomes flexible when pushed to its limits. Emotional intensity is another frequent catalyst in reported time travel experiences. Extreme grief, fear, elation, or sudden joy can trigger a disconnection from the present and a sudden immersion into a different temporal reality. Witnesses often describe a sensation of being drawn toward a specific moment in history, as if the emotional energy creates a bridge through which consciousness can move. In some cases, these shifts are short-lived, lasting only seconds or minutes, while in others, they appear to extend for hours. Observers consistently report an acute awareness of the strangeness of their surroundings, accompanied by a sense that the people and places they see exist in a reality entirely separate from their own, yet are no less real in their perception. This intersection of emotion, consciousness, and time suggests that the human experience may be more intertwined with temporal structures than previously understood, and that moments of heightened intensity may act as portals to different eras. Disorientation is also a common factor in these incidents. People who experience Sudden dizziness, fainting, or loss of spatial awareness often describe being transported into historical settings. The mind's attempt to regain equilibrium may inadvertently open pathways to temporal layers, allowing glimpses of life as it existed long before or far into the future. Such episodes often involve a distortion of normal perception, where objects, buildings, and people appear simultaneously familiar and alien. Witnesses frequently remark that these experiences feel like dreams, yet with a level of detail, clarity, and continuity that surpasses ordinary imagination. The sensation of being out of place in time is so strong that it leaves a lasting psychological impact, sometimes altering the way individuals perceive history, their own lives, and the concept of reality itself. The unpredictability of these trauma or stress-induced displacements makes them all the more fascinating. Unlike controlled experiments or deliberate explorations, they cannot be planned, and their outcomes vary widely. Some individuals return to the present with a precise memory of the era they visited, recalling conversations, objects, and social customs with remarkable accuracy. Others emerge with fragmented impressions, fleeting flashes of scenes or interactions that cannot be easily verified. There are even cases in which witnesses report overlapping timelines, seeing glimpses of both the past and the present simultaneously, creating paradoxical experiences that challenge conventional understanding of linear time. The inconsistent nature of these displacements suggests that they are not fully understood phenomena, potentially influenced by a complex interplay of psychological, physiological, and environmental factors. Some accounts indicate that the displacements may be influenced by an observer's emotional connection to the period they enter. People who have studied history extensively, or who possess a strong curiosity or fascination with a particular era, sometimes report more vivid and detailed experiences. This has led some theorists to propose that the human mind may act as a conduit, tuning into temporal echoes that exist independently of conscious knowledge. Emotional intensity could amplify this connection, effectively opening a temporary gateway to a historical reality. In such cases, the combination of emotional resonance and trauma may create a perfect storm, allowing consciousness to perceive events, people, and environments from another time as vividly as the present. The sensory richness of these experiences is another striking feature. Observers consistently report fully immersive encounters, with sights, sounds, textures, and even scents from the era they appear to inhabit. In some cases, witnesses describe conversations or rituals with such clarity that historians can later identify specific cultural practices, dialects, or social norms accurately. The ability to recall these details long after the event has occurred suggests that the experience is deeply encoded in memory, reinforcing the notion that these are genuine encounters rather than mere hallucinations. The integration of physical sensations with the psychological and emotional aspects of the displacement creates an overwhelming sense of authenticity, convincing the observer that they have genuinely been transported to another time. The human response to these experiences is often complex and intense. Witnesses frequently report a mixture of fear, awe, and wonder, struggling to reconcile the impossible nature of what they have encountered with the reality they must return to. The shock of sudden displacement can leave lingering psychological effects, including altered perceptions of time, history, and self. Some individuals describe a heightened sensitivity to temporal patterns, an awareness that past, present, and future may be more interconnected than previously imagined. Others experience recurring memories or dreams related to the period they briefly inhabited, suggesting that the emotional and cognitive impact of the event is profound and enduring. Despite the compelling nature of these accounts, skepticism remains high. Critics argue that these experiences may be explained by stress-induced hallucinations, memory distortions, or psychological phenomena such as dissociation. While such explanations can account for some elements, they do not fully address the precision of historical details, the multisensory immersion, or the consistency of reports across diverse contexts. In many cases, observers recall details that were obscure or unknown at the time of the experience, only to be verified later by historical research. This convergence of personal experience and objective evidence suggests that the phenomenon cannot be entirely dismissed, and that the role of trauma and emotional intensity in facilitating temporal displacement deserves closer attention. Environmental factors may also play a role in these incidents. Locations with rich historical significance, such as ancient streets, preserved buildings, or culturally dense landscapes, appear more likely to host these experiences. Some theorists propose that the combination of physical surroundings, emotional intensity, and physiological stress may temporarily destabilize the normal perception of time, allowing the observer to perceive historical layers that are usually inaccessible. This suggests a complex interplay between mind, body, and environment, where trauma acts as a trigger, amplifying the observer's sensitivity to temporal echoes. In conclusion, while accidental time travel triggered by trauma, stress, or disorientation remains a largely unexplained phenomenon, the recurring patterns and rich detail in these accounts suggest that it is a genuine and profound experience. Emotional intensity, extreme circumstances, and sudden physical or psychological upheaval appear to create conditions in which consciousness can traverse temporal boundaries, even if only briefly. The combination of sensory immersion, historical accuracy, and psychological impact makes these incidents some of the most compelling evidence for the possibility that time is not a rigid, linear structure, but a complex and malleable continuum that may occasionally allow humans to glimpse the past or the future. In moments of extreme intensity, of the most fascinating accounts of time travel involve situations where the experiences are corroborated by historical or archaeological evidence, suggesting that what is witnessed is not merely imagination, illusion, or misperception. In many of these cases, people have reported seeing objects, people, or events with remarkable specificity, only to have those details later confirmed by research, excavation, or the study of historical documents. The element of verification lends a rare credibility to the phenomenon, making it one of the most compelling aspects of the mysterious occurrences known as accidental time travel. These are not casual guesses or vague impressions. They are precise observations that align with facts which were unknown or undiscovered at the time of the encounter. One striking example comes from accounts in which individuals visit ancient sites and notice details that historians had not yet documented. A person might observe the layout of a building, the pattern of its decoration, or even the arrangement of furniture and tools, only to find later that archaeologists confirm those details as historically accurate. The alignment of such observations with verifiable history is difficult to explain through coincidence, research, or prior knowledge, especially when the witness had no access to specialized information. In some instances, these observations extend to very subtle cultural practices, such as greetings, gestures, or social interactions that align with the era in question. The accuracy of these details, combined with the witness's description of sensory elements, sounds, smells, textures, provides a rich, immersive impression of a time that is otherwise inaccessible. In some extraordinary cases, witnesses report seeing events that predate the documentation or discovery of the places they observe. For example, a traveler might describe frescoes, inscriptions, or artifacts in a historical building before they are unearthed or catalogued by researchers. Later, when the site is studied scientifically, the items described by the witness are confirmed to exist, sometimes with remarkable precision. These instances suggest that the observer had access to information that had yet to enter the historical record, implying a direct interaction with the past itself rather than mere imagination. The implications of such events are profound, challenging the assumption that human perception is limited to the present, and hinting at the possibility that temporal boundaries are permeable under certain conditions. Some accounts extend beyond static observations and involve witnessing interactions or daily life in the past. Individuals have described marketplaces, town squares, and streets in full activity, noting not only the architecture but also the behavior of the people within them. These observations include details such as clothing, gestures, vocal patterns, and social hierarchies that are later confirmed by historians studying the era. The level of accuracy in such cases often surpasses what one could reasonably expect from casual knowledge or education, suggesting that these experiences provide a rare, first-hand perspective of historical reality. Such occurrences imply that time travel, at least in its accidental form, may be capable of transporting consciousness or perception into authentic historical contexts. In addition to corroborating physical details, some witnesses have reported knowledge of historical events or sequences of events that were not widely known at the time. For instance, a person might describe a political upheaval, a local custom, or a scientific invention that had not been recorded in mainstream history. Later research may confirm that the descriptions are correct, including subtle aspects that could not have been inferred through logic or speculation. This intersection of experiential knowledge and historical accuracy is one of the most challenging aspects for skeptics to explain, as it moves beyond coincidence into the realm of verifiable insight. It raises profound questions about the nature of information, memory, and perception, as well as the possibility that temporal experiences may provide genuine access to events that were otherwise hidden from contemporary knowledge. Witnesses also frequently describe the sensory immersion of these experiences, which adds further credibility to the accounts. Unlike dreams or hallucinations, which tend to be fragmentary or inconsistent, these encounters often involve fully realized environments. Observers report the sounds of daily life, the smells of cooking fires or markets, the texture of walls, and even weather conditions appropriate to the time and place. This richness of sensory detail aligns with historical records, providing additional evidence that the experience is more than imagination. Some researchers have suggested that extreme emotional or physical states may heighten the brain's ability to perceive these temporal layers, but the precision of the information obtained often defies easy psychological explanation. The phenomenon of verification through evidence also extends to objects and artifacts. Some witnesses have encountered items that later appear in museum collections, historical archives, or private collections. For example, an observer may notice a particular tool, ornament, or piece of clothing being used in daily life, only to find that the exact type of object is later unearthed by archaeologists or documented in historic accounts. In some cases, even minor details, such as the stitching on a garment or the design of a utensil, are accurately described long before their discovery, suggesting that these encounters provide genuine insight into the construction and culture of the era. The consistency of such observations across multiple accounts and locations indicates that these are not isolated anomalies, but part of a broader, repeatable pattern. Another intriguing aspect of these verified experiences is the manner in which they challenge conventional understandings of chronology and causality. Witnesses sometimes describe details that should not exist until years later or anticipate developments that occur after their time. While some of these instances may be explained as coincidences, the sheer number of corroborated details across multiple accounts makes chance an unlikely explanation in many cases. This suggests that the structure of time may be more fluid than traditionally believed, with information from the past, present, and possibly future occasionally accessible to human consciousness under rare conditions. Such experiences imply that temporal reality is layered, and that these layers can sometimes intersect, allowing glimpses of events and artifacts that remain hidden to conventional perception. Historical verification also strengthens the credibility of accounts in which observers interact with people from the past. In some cases, witnesses report hearing conversations, participating in social rituals, or observing behavior that aligns precisely with historical records. The gestures, mannerisms, and customs witnessed often match what scholars later determined to have been prevalent in that society. This level of detail cannot easily be explained as coincidental or learned knowledge, particularly when the witnesses have no prior expertise in the field. The convergence of human observation and historical fact creates a compelling case that these displacements are not mere imagination, but actual experiences of past realities. Geography plays a significant role in these verified encounters. Locations with rich cultural or historical significance, ancient cities, castles, preserved villages and long-standing public spaces, are often the sites where observers report the most vivid and detailed temporal displacements. It is as though these spaces retain imprints of past activity, which can be accessed by individuals under certain conditions. Some theorists have suggested that these environments act as conduits, amplifying the perception of past events and allowing observers to witness reality as it existed long ago. The interaction between physical space, human perception, and temporal layering suggests a complex relationship that has yet to be fully understood, but which appears consistent across many reports. Despite the compelling nature of these verified experiences, skepticism remains high. Critics argue that human memory is fallible, that coincidence or research may explain some details, or that the mind reconstructs historical knowledge subconsciously. While these factors may account for some elements, they do not fully explain the precision, specificity, and consistency of observations that are later corroborated. The convergence of sensory experience, detailed observation, and independent verification challenges conventional explanation. And suggests that these temporal encounters are genuine phenomena worthy of serious investigation. The ability to perceive or interact with the past has profound implications. It raises questions about the nature of consciousness, the permeability of time, and the potential for humans to access layers of reality that are normally hidden. Verified encounters with historical realities suggest that our understanding of time is incomplete, and that under certain conditions, accidental travel or observation of the past is not only possible but verifiable. This challenges the assumption that history exists solely in books or artifacts, instead proposing that past realities may continue to exist, layered within the fabric of space and time, accessible to those who encounter them under extraordinary circumstances. Perhaps the most striking aspect of time travel accounts is the unpredictable, fleeting nature of the experiences, showing that these displacements through time are not deliberate or controllable but brief, accidental, and often disorienting. Witnesses frequently describe encounters that last only moments, sometimes mere seconds, yet feel like hours and always leave a lasting impression on their consciousness. Unlike scientific experiments or technological simulations, these incidents are not initiated by human intention. They occur spontaneously, often during unexpected circumstances, and vanish without warning. The impermanence of these experiences adds to their mystique, making them difficult to study, verify, or reproduce, yet simultaneously underscoring the fragile and transient possibilities inherent in the structure of time itself. A common feature of these eating temporal experiences is the intense immediacy of perception. Witnesses often report a sense that the world around them has suddenly become layered, that multiple eras are intersecting in the same space, and that they are momentarily observing reality from a position outside of normal chronology. In some accounts, the observer sees the same location in different states simultaneously. An old street may contain both the modern architecture of the present and the cobblestones and horse-drawn carriages of centuries past. The simultaneous perception of multiple timelines can be confusing and overwhelming, leaving witnesses uncertain whether what they see is real or a product of their imagination. The intensity of these experiences reinforces the sense that time is not strictly linear, but flexible and occasionally permeable. These fleeting journeys through time often occur under extreme circumstances, such as moments of emotional intensity, physical stress, or sudden danger. Some witnesses have reported near-death experiences, accidents, or moments of profound fear coinciding with temporal displacement. In these moments, reality appears to shift, presenting the observer with scenes, people, and objects from a past era with startling clarity. Many report that the experience is accompanied by a heightened awareness, a sense of clarity, or an acute perception of historical detail, suggesting that the brain or consciousness may function differently when normal temporal constraints are disrupted. The combination of intense emotion and environmental conditions seems to act as a catalyst, allowing the observer to access moments in time that would normally remain inaccessible. Despite their brevity, these experiences often leave lasting and vivid memories. Witnesses can recall minute details with extraordinary accuracy, from the colors and textures of clothing to the sounds of conversations and the arrangements of objects. Some report remembering entire streets, marketplaces, or rooms as they existed in the past, often with architectural and cultural accuracy later verified by historical research or archaeology. The persistence of these memories, even when the experience itself was fleeting, suggests that temporal encounters can imprint strongly on human consciousness, providing insights that go far beyond casual imagination or inference. The contrast between the short duration of the event and the richness of the memory reinforces the notion that these are genuine phenomena rather than dreams or hallucinations. The unpredictability of these fleeting temporal events is another defining characteristic. They often appear without warning, and there is no known way to anticipate or induce them at will. Witnesses report that one moment they are fully engaged in normal life, and the next, the world has shifted around them. Buildings, streets, and landscapes may change suddenly. People may appear in attire from centuries ago, and objects that no longer exist in the present may become visible. The transience of these events adds a layer of mystery, as the observer cannot control the experience or extend its duration, and often struggles to comprehend what they have witnessed once reality returns to normal. This impermanence suggests that accidental time travel may be a phenomenon dependent on specific, rare conditions, rather than a replicable process. In many cases, these brief encounters are accompanied by a sense of invisibility or non-interaction. Observers often describe being unnoticed by those inhabiting the temporal setting they are transported into, as if they are ghostly presences temporarily occupying a space outside the normal flow of events. People in the past go about their routines, speak to one another, and conduct daily activities without acknowledging the observer. This invisibility reinforces the notion that time travel, when accidental, is not a deliberate insertion into history, but a temporary overlap that allows observation without interference. Some witnesses report that attempts to interact with people or objects fail, or that their presence seems ignored, further emphasizing the fleeting and uncontrollable nature of the experience. The impermanence of these temporal shifts also appears to involve a distortion of subjective time. Observers frequently report that moments in the past seem to stretch or compress relative to the present. A few seconds may feel like hours, with a fully immersive sensory experience that includes sights, sounds, and even smells appropriate to the era. Conversely, hours spent observing the past may seem to the witness to have passed in the blink of an eye. This dissonance between subjective and objective time complicates efforts to measure or document the experience, yet it provides further evidence that these are real phenomena, experienced consistently across different witnesses and contexts. The flexibility of perceived time suggests that temporal displacement affects not only the physical environment, but also the observer's consciousness and perception. The fleeting nature of accidental time travel also creates paradoxical and enigmatic moments. Witnesses often return to the present with objects, knowledge, or impressions that do not seem to belong to their own era. These anomalies, such as descriptions of lost artifacts, knowledge of long-forgotten customs, or details about historical events that were not widely known, challenge conventional understanding, and suggest that even brief exposure to past realities can leave tangible traces. Some observers report that these impressions influence their decisions or creative work, leading them to produce art, research, or writing inspired by their experiences. In this way, the brevity of the encounter does not diminish its impact. Rather, it may heighten its significance by concentrating the intensity of perception and leaving a lasting imprint on consciousness. Geography and environment often play a role in shaping these fleeting encounters. Locations with dense historical significance, ancient streets, preserved towns, archaeological sites, or cultural landmarks, appear more likely to host these experiences. Witnesses often describe the environment itself as contributing to the temporal overlap, with certain spaces acting as catalysts or amplifiers for the perception of past events. Some theorists have suggested that human consciousness is particularly sensitive to areas with high historical resonance, where residual temporal energy may linger, allowing brief intersections with another era. These spatial patterns indicate that accidental time travel may not be purely random, but influenced by a complex interplay of mind, environment, and temporal factors. The psychological and emotional impact of these brief encounters is profound. Witnesses frequently describe lasting changes in their perception of history, time, and self. The sudden awareness of a reality beyond their own era can instill humility, awe, and a deeper understanding of the continuity of human experience. Many report feeling a connection to people and places from the past, as though they have shared a moment in a continuum that stretches across centuries. This impact can be transformative, altering the way individuals perceive life, memory, and their place in history. Even though the experience itself is brief, its resonance often endures, shaping thoughts, beliefs, and creativity for years afterward. The fleeting, unpredictable nature of these encounters also underscores the difficulty of scientific study. Because the events are accidental, rare, and inconsistent, researchers cannot reliably observe or reproduce them. Most knowledge comes from witness testimony, often collected long after the experience. However, the consistency of details, the sensory richness, and in some cases corroboration with historical facts, provide compelling evidence that these are not mere fabrications or hallucinations. The ephemeral quality of the events highlights both the mystery and the allure of accidental time travel, suggesting that the phenomenon exists on the edges of human perception, occasionally breaking through under rare and extraordinary conditions. The ephemeral nature of accidental time travel ultimately reinforces a sense of wonder and humility. Witnesses are reminded of the fragility and complexity of time, and of their own fleeting position within it. Even brief moments spent observing the past or glimpsing future possibilities reveal layers of reality that remain largely hidden in everyday life. These experiences suggest that time may not be a simple, linear progression, but a dynamic, malleable continuum, capable of bending, folding, or overlapping in ways that are only occasionally perceptible to human consciousness. The fleetingness of these encounters makes them rare and precious, fleeting windows into realities that exist beyond ordinary understanding. Across these astonishing accounts, a clear picture begins to emerge. Time may not be the rigid, unidirectional flow we have always assumed. From mysterious historical encounters to sudden displacements across eras, from trauma-triggered journeys to verified glimpses of the past, and finally to the fleeting, unpredictable nature of these experiences, one thing is evident. Time is far more fragile and malleable than human perception allows. These stories reveal that the past, present, and possibly the future are interconnected in ways that are still beyond our understanding, accessible under rare and extraordinary circumstances. They challenge conventional notions of history, consciousness, and reality itself, suggesting that what we perceive as the present is just one layer within a far more complex temporal landscape. What resonates most in all these accounts is the profound human experience of witnessing something impossible, yet undeniably real. The awe, confusion, fear, and wonder felt by those who encounter these temporal anomalies remind us that the universe may hold mysteries far greater than technology or science can currently explain. They force us to question our assumptions about reality and to consider the possibility that every moment is intertwined with countless others, with echoes of the past and glimpses of the future waiting to be discovered in the most unexpected ways. Time travel, in its unpredictable, accidental, and fleeting forms, remains one of the greatest enigmas humanity has ever faced.
Good spices over here.
It is a phenomenon that cannot be fully controlled, yet it leaves an indelible mark on those who experience it, reshaping perception, memory, and understanding. Whether these events are the result of consciousness navigating hidden layers of reality, a bending of the physical laws of time, or some combination of the two, they serve as a reminder that our grasp on reality is limited and that the mysteries of the universe extend far beyond what we see in the present. Ultimately, these stories inspire a sense of curiosity and wonder, reminding us that reality may be far stranger than our minds can imagine. They challenge us to look beyond the boundaries of time, to question what is possible, and to remain open to the unknown. The fleeting glimpses of other eras, the verified details from history, and the emotional intensity of these experiences all point to a universe in which time is not merely measured by clocks or calendars, but is a living, dynamic fabric that occasionally reveals its hidden dimensions to those fortunate, or perhaps unfortunate, enough to witness them. And in that vast, mysterious flow of time, who is to say that what we call the present is all that truly exists, and what we have yet to see may already be waiting just beyond the next heartbeat?